Hello, my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm the Dean at the College of Business at Dallas Baptist University, and we're glad that you're a part of this session. I get to the great pleasure to introduce Professor Sattar Bhawani, who is the Chief Executive Officer and C-Suite Master Executive Coach of the Center for Executive Education. He has over 30 years experience of working with global clients across various industries on leadership development and executive coaching, and he's written 2 books recently, one on transforming the next generation of leaders and developing those leaders for a disruptive, digital-driven era in the fourth industrial revolution. And then this most recent book, Leadership in Disruptive Times. So welcome, Professor. We're so pleased that you're here, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Thank you, first of all, to Sharon, and to Mike, and to, of course, the university, DBU, for inviting me to join the Tech Symposium for 2020. We're living in a very unprecedented time, as we know, during COVID. I think this is the first time that the universities organize this virtually. And I believe in previous years, of course, as a conference, like many other programs that are, over the last 6 months that I've delivered, it's all virtually because of the travel restriction. The topic, very interesting. When Sharon got in touch with me, he got hold of my book in the US, and he read the Leadership in Disruptive Times, and he got in touch with me, and we shared some ideas about what it means and how it's impacting businesses, even universities, and of course, social organizations, religious organizations, and so forth. And I've been invited to talk about this at many platforms. As a matter of fact, last week there were 2 events, one in Africa, in Kenya, Mombasa, and on Saturday it was at Hanoi in Vietnam, also for boards and CEO. And talking about the impact of the pandemic or the disruptive force of COVID-19 on the business, and also preparing for new normal. So with that note, let me just share the screen, the topic for today. And the title, yes, The Leadership in Disruptive Times, is exactly the same theme of the book that was my second book that was published in July this year. The work, the research actually started last year after I published my first book on transforming the next generation of leaders for the Industry 4.0, and there were many businesses asking to talk about digital transformation and how organizations can prepare their leaders for the disruptive impact of the future work, and how can we get organization and also leadership and across the organization to be ready for the new norm. For what we call the future workplace. That started actually in August until December, until the COVID-19, the pandemic hit us in Wuhan, China, and when the lockdown happened on the 23rd January 2020, the publisher in New York, the Business Press, got in touch with me, and the editors and publisher decided, look, why not you include, besides talking about the disruptive impact of the digital transformation, let's talk about the potential. That was in January, February, mind you, very, very early on, before the lockdown. So the publisher was quite, very astute, and, saying, okay, let's talk about this. Primarily, the book is to focus on the managing or leading through crisis. What do we need to do, and how can we prepare leaders for future crisis, future disruption? So that was basically the focus of the book. And thanks, Jeff, Dr. Johnson, for the introduction. I think I will not go into further today. Just to talk about my background. Primarily, I've been a business executive for many years, in healthcare and professional services, and then moved into consulting. I'm a job professor at several universities in Asia, and also in Paris Graduate School in France. And my focus is on disruptive leadership. Very focused for the last 10 years, looking at how to prepare leader for the fourth industrial revolution. That is my focus. The book has been endorsed by various thought leaders in the world, so I will not go into that. And then those who are interested can go to the link and read many of the global CEO, CHRO endorsement of the book. It's a toolkit. So basically, what organizations today are using in Asia, many of the organizations are using it as a toolkit to prepare for the new normal, and how to help organizations and how to help leaders to be ready for the post-pandemic. So this is ongoing now in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, India. And this afternoon I was with a client in India, in Mumbai, exactly to prepare how to get their teams ready. It's a high-tech organization to get ready for the new normal. So let me talk a little bit about disruption. So when we talk about disruption, maybe the first word, maybe I can ask Mike or Jeff, what is the first word that come to mind when we talk about disruption?
Pain.
Yes, something that's unexpected.
Unexpected, yes. Maybe Jeff?
Formerly a black swan event, right? Something that
Yeah. Did I hear you say black swan?
black swan, yes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that exactly this is what I would talk about. Thank you so much, Mike. But the easiest, the word we took from a business perspective, and I found the simplest definition is from this Cambridge dictionary. And the way they define it, disruption is the action of completely changing the traditional way that we used to operate by using new method of technology. So we talk about disruption. Of course, we will talk about disruptive innovation, and it's what Clayton Christensen talk about, and I will discuss about that and how we will talk about Uber and Netflix. Why one is disruptive while the other one is not. While both are innovation, so a lot of people misunderstood and don't understand the concept of disruptive innovation. So here, disruption is completely changing the way, and the COVID-19 is a disruptive force, and it has changed the way we do business, and it accelerates the digital transformation. So the impact of or unintended consequences of the COVID-19, it has actually accelerated. Over the last 6 months, I've seen clients now, quickly jump into the bandwagon to try to put into, practice, put into the, create a culture of wanting to be ready to implement the digital transformation. When over the last 10 years, I've been going around the world talking about the importance of organizations to prepare, leveraging on the fourth industrial revolution. And many people say we can do it. And what we have seen over the last 6 to 10 months, since the Wuhan virus or the Wuhan lockdown, and because of the travel restriction imposed by many governments as part of the social distancing or part of the containment to restrict the spread of the virus, and organizations to adapt. And this is where I think the digital transformation become, we talk about work from home or work from anywhere. In Harvard Business School, the research has been all on work from anywhere. It doesn't have to be work from home, it can be anywhere as long as the work gets done. And especially you look at the alternative workforce today, the gig workers, they are very comfortable, and they are the ones who find it easier to assimilate and to be able to deliver what organization wants, because that's what they've been doing even before the pandemic. Whereas the boomer, the Gen X, even to a certain extent, Gen Y, they are finding it a little bit challenging and adapting over the last few months. So we talk about the COVID-19 and all the digital transformation. The biggest challenge that in my research and what I published, I found when I interview CEOs, senior business leaders, when I asked them what is the single most impediment or the barrier to be able to implement your business strategy, the new way of doing business in time of disruption, is to be able to reorientate the way they think, to be able to redevelop or reinvent the business model, business strategy to ensure survival. And if you look at COVID-19, this is absolutely true because a lot of organizations are struggling. Why? Because there's no playbook. Many companies in Hong Kong, for example, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, these are the 4 countries where the SARS in 2003 and 2004, the SARS epidemic, it's not really pandemic, it doesn't go to many countries except in Asia, but these are the 4 countries, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and were impacted badly. And what they found that many of these business leader organizations try to refer to their BCP, business continuity planning, looking at what they have done, at that time in 2003, 2004 during SARS pandemic, or in certain extent in US, H1N1, crisis or the Ebola. But the point I'm trying to make is that you cannot. This is interesting because you cannot rely on the past. There's no playbook, but the COVID-19 is totally one of its kind, and it's a 1 in 100 years. As I think Mike mentioned about Black Swan, it is a Black Swan. So the coronavirus or the COVID-19, and is example of truly a disruptive force, and it disrupted the supply chain. And we have seen from China, because a lot of manufacturing in Wuhan is the center, the Hubei province. Wuhan is part of Hubei province, where there's huge epicenter of manufacturing of all sorts. And it's the central hub where China's all the movement of goods, and it disrupts. Many companies are caught off guard. And today, of course, people learn, and now many organizations, try to mitigate that by having different supplies and ensuring that this will, if it does happen again, they're better prepared. So what we have seen in chapter 2 of my book, I talk about VUCA. In chapter 3, I talk about the disruptive force. And I have spoke to the WHO here in Singapore, done interviews and spoken to the WTO, World Trade Organization, looking at the ILO, International Labour Organization, looking at the World Bank, IMF report for 6 months. 6 months, and I've studied looking at the impact, the devastating impact of COVID-19 on jobs, on livelihood, and on industry, decimate industry. There is no industry that is not affected, but there's no industry is expected as bad as the airline, the travel and tourism, the airline. And you can expect the next 6 months to see many airlines going to go bankrupt. There will be, it's already started. Starting that you see several airlines have announced, because of the failure to be able to survive. This is the disruptive force that we talk about, the COVID-19, and it's going to be worse than the Spanish flu that we know of earlier in the 1920s and 30s. So what are we going to do? So what leaders need to do? And as Mike correctly mentioned, and he doesn't have my slide, but he's absolutely spot on, Mike. And you got it right, because one of the things that we talk about, and if you look at the impact of COVID-19, many organizations do not know what to do, because the definition that we always hear is that it's unprecedented. And it's unprecedented because many organizations have never seen the way the virus has, impacted in terms of, as I said, the disruption into business, into the way of life. The way of life. It's created fear to employees, to stakeholders, and many leaders are not able to respond quickly to reassure their employees, their customers, and at the national level, this is the biggest challenge that government have to face. How do we ensure that public health comes first? But this is the biggest challenge. You're talking about the trade-off. When you're talking about putting all this travel restriction, social distancing, restaurant, closing of the businesses, part of the mitigating measures to ensure the containment of the virus from spreading, in the community and so forth. That has an impact on business viability, and government has to put a lot of what we call measures, put out measures of fiscal measures to support businesses, individuals. And worldwide, many organizations does that. So this is something that we have found the challenge that there are organizations who are not able to do it effectively. And this is where we have found, in my research, I've found a lot of companies who are not able to put in place or do not have what we call a sustainable business model, especially the small, medium enterprise or SMB, small, medium businesses, small, medium enterprise. They are the ones who suffers the most. So this is unprecedented. The word black swan basically means that is rare and it has a tremendous impact on the operations or the what we call the day-to-day, what we call the usual way of doing business. So, and the word black swan, because you don't see black swan is normally used, you see them, white, and it was discovered back many years ago in Australia. There are black swan in Melbourne. And for today, it's quite common. You can find a lot of places that we have black swan. But the point that this is a black swan that is unpredictable. It was not expected, just like what we call the September 11. It was a black swan event, and also the Brexit. The British, the UK exit from the EU. That was actually that is a example of black swan event, and now COVID-19, which all of us have experienced. So let's now move to the topic about disruption. So we talk about, because I started out with COVID-19 because we need to understand disruption does not necessarily have to come with from technology, because the common misconception when we talk about disruption, it has to be technology. And there's one disruption that is coming in 20 years' time, maybe 25 years' time, the climate change that we are experiencing. We can anticipate in the next 20 years, probably that will be a real disruptor or has a huge disruptive impact on businesses. So the question is this: are we ready for it? So are you ready for the next Black Swan event where, the author, I remember it was Nassim Nicholas Taleb, he wrote the book, the Black Swan. It's a very interesting book. And the question was, people tend to ask him always, so what's the next Black Swan? From the market forces, the Wall Street, when can we predict another event? What does it mean? And I think we have to be prepared, because it can be, things, what we have learned from COVID-19 is that this is totally unanticipated, and we must be prepared for other events. So I'm going to focus on now move to disruptive innovation. So let me now ask both of you, Jeff and Mike, when you talk about disruptive innovation, what's the first thing that comes to mind, again, from your understanding of the term?
3 years ago, when I ran strategy and the PMO for engineering, a global firm, we did a Black Swan event analysis, and the pandemic did not come up, right? It was so far out of our thought process that the whole world would be impacted. From a technology perspective, we often talk about high availability and having redundant servers in different regions of the world and things like that. But we did not think that the whole world would stop at the same time. So this disruption comes from things that you cannot predict. Is
Predict.
that I think of it.
So excellent, Mike. Thank you so much. I think what you just described, the unpredictability, yeah, that is actually the element what we have been talking about, because nobody expect the impact going to be so devastating, yeah, on lives and livelihood, you know, on society, and the number of deaths. That you look at the number of deaths worldwide, yeah, you know. It's phenomenal, over 1 million, and you talk about more than 40 million people being infected. And in the US alone, it's more than 200,000. And even you look at the other countries in Europe right now, it's going through the second wave or even third wave in certain countries. So this is something, you're right, so it's very unpredictable, unexpected. But when you talk about disruptive innovation, in the word of Clayton Christensen, so I'd like to take some time to share with you his definition in the book. It's a very, it's exciting. I mean, I first read this book back in 98, when it was launched, 97, 98, Innovator's Dilemma. And he's talking about why new technologies is disrupted, established firms to fail, and why they're not able to meet up or be able to meet the challenge imposed by the smaller startup. Yeah, and the interesting thing when he's talking about disruptive innovation, again, you know, if you look at and I will talk about the Netflix and Uber example in a short while, but the way he defined it is that disruptive innovation is a process by which a product or service take root initially in a simple application, going into a market that is entrenched by a leading competitor. And this smaller player will come in and move up eventually and displace the established competitors. So the key word here is taking root in a very simple application, getting acceptance, able to move, nimble, agile, to move up and then disrupt the marketplace, and to be able to eventually over a period of time to displace the leading competitor. So when we talk about the disruptive innovation, we need to understand that not all companies are actually disruptive innovators. And although we may think that, as I said, I will talk about Uber and Netflix in a short while. And Clayton, by the way, is very sad. I have been wanting to meet up with him, but I was in the US many times. There was one occasion, it was in Singapore, but I was away in China, but I didn't have a chance to see him. But I think what he has explained in his book, and subsequently in the and I'll talk about the Harvard Business Review article that he published in 2015. What he talked about is that many of these larger established organizations are finding it very difficult to respond effectively to all the smaller startups. And the reason is because they're so entrenched and so at times complacent. I would say complacency. They focus on the larger market, the bigger market, more profitable segment, and they do not pay attention to this new startup. And one of the challenge is you're not able to quickly respond effectively to prevent this smaller market challenger, yeah, to when they start disrupting the marketplace, and all these established players are not able to react nimble because they're so huge, so big, and they find it difficult to move the whole organization in response to the challenge posed by the disruptor. But the point here is what Netflix did is very interesting. Instead of going head on, going going after blockbuster core customers, yeah. So what they know, they're not able to offer a more distinctive, a more value-driven offering or services. So what they did was, when the online streaming, start to become more popular, and they were able to appeal to the blockbuster. Blockbuster used to have this. I remember some of my friends, I was in California. They have this late fee. I don't know if you remember. I think it was very expensive, $40 when you are late in returning your DVDs, and you have to pay that kind of penalty. So what Netflix did was, okay, we offer you a wide selection, real time on demand, anytime you want it, a very low price one fee. It's very convenient and huge content. And this is what actually totally disrupt the marketplace, because Blockbuster do not have the ability to do that at that time, because they're interested in the stores. There's so many stores. They are focusing on their business model was not that versatile to be adapted and move quickly and respond to Netflix disruptive impact on their business. And the rest is history, as we know. And of course, Netflix under Reed Hastings has grown, and as a CEO, Reed Hastings is phenomenal as a CEO, and I'll talk about that later towards the end about the culture and so forth. But what is Uber? Uber, is not disruptive in the sense of the word of Clayton Christensen, because what Uber is innovative. It solves a problem, and the problem in New York City, in many of the bigger cities, is that to be able to get a cab, is a real challenge to be able to get, to reach out and get a cab to come, to be able to make it easier for the riders or for the taxi users or customers. So what Uber did was to be able to develop the convenient way of booking cabs using your handphone or mobile phone or smartphone. So if you look at, it's simplified, but they did not actually they did not go after the taxi companies, customers, or head on to offer something alternative. But what they did at that time was simply to make it easier, convenient, and did not disrupt the industry per se. So that's why if you look at both the Netflix and Uber, and many people thought they are both, disruptive, innovative, but Netflix, as I explained, is indeed disruptive. So just to talk about, to wrap up about the disruptive innovation segment here, in 2013, that's a very interesting report by McKinsey. And McKinsey in 2013 published a report talk about the advanced technology, the disruptive technology, and they named 12 of them. You can see on the slide. And they expect by 2025, which is 5 years from now, that the contribution, the sheer size of the economic value or output will be about 100 trillion. And some of these technologies today is already, almost all of them, mobile internet or 5G network, talking about artificial knowledge, IoT, iOS, cloud, advanced robotics, autonomous vehicle, Tesla, Google. Been doing that for several years now. The next gen genomics and IBM, the big the supercomputer. They have been involved in research for cancer, and then of course you have energy storage, 3D, and the rest. So if you look by and large, most of these advanced technology, or what we call disruptive technology, is already in place. So we can expect to see much more newer technology. For example, we talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Now there's artificial general intelligence. We talk about machine learning, and very soon we can see that AI, what we call the advanced, we call it the advanced general intelligence, where you'll be able to have robot or AI to think, act, and like a human being. So again, there's a huge implication in terms of in business and of course in warfare and in other applications, military applications, so forth. So this is all currently ongoing. So the disruptive technology is here to stay. The question is, are we ready for it? And we have to be, because, and this is from a business standpoint, if you look at the future workplace, Okay, in future workplace, the world of work will change tremendously. In the new normal, post-pandemic, we can expect to see disruptive technology play a huge part in terms of allowing employees to be able to access a lot of things, information across the world, and to be able to have customers, connectivity between companies and customers much more closer than ever. And because the technology is here to stay, with the 5G network that we have seen in the US, in some part of Asia, like in Korea, Japan, in China, we have seen the impact, the potential, and how we can help business. Now, then we have talked about the disruptive force COVID-19. We talk about the disruptive impact of the digital transformation. And we have seen that there are going to be huge challenges. And there are going to be more disruptive events in the future. So how do we resolve it? So let me now introduce you a concept called Leadership 4.0 in my book, the latest book, Leadership Disruptive Time, chapter 10. Towards the end, I talk about leaders must be prepared. I call them the disruptive digital leaders. Disruptive digital leaders with a set of 6 competencies, that broad competencies, that skills that leaders need to demonstrate to be successful in leading their teams in the new normal. Okay, and this got to do with their mindset shift, and got to do with the ability to drive results of the team through a culture of customer centricity and innovation. And that is important. Now, what are these 6 competencies? So we start with one, what we call the disruptive mentality. And here is where I've looked in the book, we have several case studies. We have Satya Nadella from Microsoft, the third CEO of Microsoft, a great guy. And he's one of the leaders that I believe has been able to truly demonstrate the 5th competency they called empathy. You know, his book called Hit Refresh is a phenomenal book. You should get a copy, read up. It's interesting. So in my book, I talk about him, about his ability to have an impact on the people, the team that he led, empathy. So let me just go ahead to number 1, the disruptive mentality, the innovation-driven, followed by the visionary, entrepreneurial skills. How do you think creatively? How do you create that, when we talk about innovation, you need to be able to, envision the future and be able to have the risk-taking, the entrepreneurial skills, followed by very interesting, what we call cognitive readiness. In my research, and also over the last 10 years with my team in the US, Executive Development Associates, my colleague, we have done research and we publish it since 2014, 2016. We published a report called the Global Benchmarking, looking at leaders, what it takes to succeed in Industry 4.0 in the VUCA-driven digital environment. And one of the set of competencies is called cognitive readiness. And this is ability to demonstrate or connect the dots. When you look at different information, you have different source data. When you talk about the in a digital driven organization, the big data, how do you use predictive analysis, and how do you able to see through huge amount of information using what we call both your analytical skills and your at times you need to use intuition. And this is interesting because it's a balance. How do we rely on data? Do we rely on data 100%? Or do we also look at experience, from your past experience, your intuition? So that in the book is huge chapter on chapter 6, when I talk about what are some of these sub-competency of cognitive readiness. Okay, and it's okay to fail fast, learn and move on. How do you create a culture? And this is the challenge, because some organizations are not used to allow people. When you need to create a culture or a learning organization, you need to allow people to make mistakes. This is the challenge. A lot of leaders do not appreciate and do not recognize and do not reward. Unlike you look at in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, in California, many of the organizations, they are a bit different. Of course, there's a culture that in a startup you need to be able to support. And number 5, as mentioned just now, about empathy, social skills, create rapport, a trust-based partnership, be able to ensure that your team, you provide them the support necessary to help them to drive for success. When you want to implement a digital transformation project, so that support and that rapport, the trust, a trust-based partnership is absolutely important. And this is really the best person who demonstrate this is Satya Nadella, I mentioned earlier. So in Microsoft, for example, compared to Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, huge difference. He's the 3rd CEO, and he has transformed Microsoft today to be much more better organization, much more successful if you look at the results in terms of the stock price of Microsoft today. And what he has done is creating a culture of not only innovation, experimentation, but also most importantly, showing care and concern, but not just looking at results, which is the last competency, driving for result. Yes, results are important, but it's not just anything on numbers, but how do you create a culture of empowerment, employee-centered, or I call it PPT. In my book, I talk put people before process and technology. So in Microsoft example, and also Starbucks, this is a classical, we all talk about, customer centricity. We always hear this, customer is always right, put customer first. But the mantra of putting customer first, yes, has worked. But today, I think more important is put your employee first, because if your employee are satisfied, if you're able to give them, empower them, help them to be able to respond to the customer in a much more effective way, that is where, and I call it, employee first centric mindset. So how do you put employee first? A good example would be Virgin Group, Virgin Airlines, Richard Branson. Another example is Marriott Hotel. Marriott Hotel, Arne Sorensen, the CEO of Marriott Hotel International, demonstrated when he was trying to deliver the message. If you remember in March, he was recognized as one of the greatest leaders, because when you need to deliver tough message to the people, to tell them you need to close hotels, thousands of people will be laid off. But how you do it, and you need to do it with empathy, showing authenticity. So what Arne Sorensen, and you can find the video later, I'll give the link, all the videos I'm talking about, all to be found in, in our DLI, South Malaysia Institute, the Institute YouTube page. We have found one of the best examples is Marriott Hotel CEO, Arne Sorensen, and the other one is a political leader from New Zealand. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who is able to develop this ability to connect with the people when they need to announce measures. So this 6, and after if you do all these first 5 right, number 6 will fall in place beautifully, because results is a lagging indicator. So all bear in mind, the result is a lagging indicator. You need to look for the what we call the forces that are going to be able to drive results, and that's the people. PPT, put people before process and technology. So now the last part I'm going to talk about is the digital transformation in organizations. So when you have the right leaders, you'll be able to bring and you develop them with the 6 skills that I just talked about, the disruptive digital competency. The question now, you need to lead a project. You need to put in place a digital transformation, DT or DX project. Now the question is this: how can you ensure success? And it's huge. The investment in putting in place a digital transformation project is huge. The question is, you need to ensure the success by creating the right culture. So when I was looking in my book, I talk about the DBS bank, the Singapore bank, which became the largest, the most successful, the best bank in the world, digital bank in the world for 4 years. So that's the DBS bank. There was a huge case study there. And I also wrote about Microsoft, Starbucks, about Netflix, Uber, and Grab. And interestingly, Uber disrupt supposedly, and the taxi, or at least they have made an impact in just the way that how taxi operate. Of course, there was retaliation from the taxi industry subsequently in the US, but in Asia, they failed. So they tried to go to China and South Asia, and there was a startup in Singapore, or there is a startup in Singapore called Grab, which eventually take on Uber and acquire Uber business in South Asia. And so there's some examples. So I studied those organizations as they implemented some of their digital transformation agenda or initiative. I found that there is a set of key success factors. Okay? A set of key success factors, which I would say, if you were to look at over the last 10 years, many of the organizations, have tried to try and error. Some organizations, because if you look at digital transformation, of course, Google, IBM, Amazon. Amazon is the best. My next book will be focusing on Amazon, the Amazon culture, about how they able, Jeff Bezos has transformed Amazon. And in these six, in my recent work, and I was doing research for the postgrad, one of the projects for one of my postgrad students was sharing with me that the Amazon culture clearly has these six. One is you must have clarity of vision, and that applies to Netflix, to DBS Bank, Piyush Gupta, I see on the left, there on the top. The guy on the top left, there's Piyush Gupta, the CEO of DBS Bank. So in chapter 5, I talk about how he transformed by having a clarity of digital vision. There's transformation agenda. Second is an absolute necessity, the critical success factor of getting customer obsession in every employee. So customer centricity is important. So people need to think, keep on thinking, how can I make things easy? Every solution that you design is for the customer using design thinking. Yeah. Third is about digital-driven organization and about looking at the way technology is used to make it easier to deliver value for the customer. And everything you do is centered around technology with the customer in the middle of it and getting the people ready to deliver the customer value. And how do you do that? Step 4 is about clear communication. So there must be clear line of sight. Everyone must be clear about what exactly they are expected to do. There's clarity about expectation, clarity about the KPI, the key performance indicator, the metrics for success. The communication also refers to at all levels. How do you ensure that people clearly understand what is expected, and how do you, using performance coaching, coach them regularly to ensure that they meet the numbers? So the leader role here in the digital transformation, the leader's role is to be a coach, not a manager. So you need to guide, inspire, support them, work with them to lead and engage them to achieve the objective of the digital transformation agenda. And that leads to number 6. So when you need to solve problems as you lead your team, you look at creating solution or the process of problem solving and decision making using big data, using predictive analysis, and use those information to help you make decisions. But bear in mind that you need to be able to be discerning enough to look at what are the relevant information. Sometimes there are information, too much information, and how do you sift through all this information to make the right decision. And this is where you need to be able to work with your team, create what we call a rapid response. A rapid response meaning that you need to be able to respond quickly to the challenge, especially with customer complaint or customer issues, But at the same time, we do not want to neglect the importance of to empower the team to be able to provide the solution, push them, guide them, not to tell them what to do, but they know what to do, especially the younger, the gig workers, the Gen Z or the digital natives and Gen Y, they're very resourceful, very versatile. So they know what you need to do, but you need to inspire them and push them and guide them. And that leads to the last point, the last important factor. As I said, these are not sequential. This is not 1 to 6, but these are the top 6 factors that will drive success. But to me, number 6 is the most important, because if you do not have the right people, remember I mentioned about PPT, putting people before process and technology. So if you have that in place, if you have the right people, the right leader who's going to inspire the team, you have the right leader who's going to able to impact and influence the team to solve the problem, the customer issues, helping them to be able to leverage on the technology to deliver the value to the customers. Now, this is where the role of CHRO is important. You need to work with the business leader, the CEO, to identify the right people. So the digital transformation leader could be the CDO, Chief Digital Officer, or it could be CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or it could be CIO, or it could be just a project management, or it could be CMO. It used to be a CMO, sometimes Chief Marketing Officer. But whatever the title may be, but the important thing is that they must have the ability to support the development of the team and helping the team to grow. I think the biggest challenge, and when I speak to a lot of CHRO, head of HR, they understand what it takes to succeed. Because when you have the senior leadership, the CEO, the head of organization, not believe in that. So you must have the CEO believe in it. Sometimes the board, you have some of the board, they believe in it, but when you have a CEO who have other priorities, when they look at, but this is very strategic, long-term implication. You talk about culture, you need to develop. And some leaders, senior leaders, CEO, they look at short-term, gain and so forth. And that's why the disruptive digital mentality. So when you start hiring, I mean, I work with a lot of boards to identify successor to existing CEOs. And one of the things that I recommend and that look at the disruptive digital competency. So look, do they possess this? Do they demonstrate? That's the first step. So because the leader, the CEO will undoubtedly will transform the culture. So the culture of the organization, in the university, I'm sure the president of the university, same thing, would have an impact, to the culture of the whole institution. So what we recommend is that, yes, we need to assess. So I will work with CHRO or even the board. I said, look, these are the 5, 6 competencies. So you need to assess, are your leaders ready for this digital driven workplace or the world of work? The world of work is going to change in the next 5 years. It's already started to change. What I just described is what is happening today in many technology companies. And of course, the other companies like Boeing, for example, Procter & Gamble. So with that note, I want to say thank you so much. I'm open to questions, any question.
You talked about the fact that a lot of leaders are struggling. What do you think is the fundamental reason beneath the competencies that struggle is happening?
Mike, excellent. I think, as I said, my concluding remark earlier, I give you some example in Asia case study that I work. It's about education. One is the way they've been brought up, the way they've been accustomed to in schools, for example. The way they think. Like I'll give you an example very easy in Singapore. One of the biggest problem is because the way the education system is that we have been for many years, except I would say the last 10 years, like 10, 15 years, things have changed. But we have been told that, the teachers knows best, the school knows best. You're not to question. Your role as students to accept. Your role as student, as you go from your high school to university, even you just have to accept what has been taught by the professor, by the teacher. Now that's wrong because, and we have found that with the Gen Y, with the digital native Gen Z, they This is unacceptable. So the number one of the reason why in culture, in Asian culture especially, they are struggling because of the way they've been educated, the schools, the environment, and home. Yeah. So you find in the Western, whether in America or in Europe, they are much more better in that sense because of the way they've been taught. So one is the culture, national culture. I'm talking about national culture. Second is the ability of the opportunities being given. Whether for example, in many in Asia, there are limited opportunities to be exposed from young, and as a graduate or intern. You are exposed to opportunity to go. I think in US you have all these great internship opportunities. Go into large organization and experience firsthand and see how leaders does it. So in Asia, I think most of them do not have that. So I think if you look at organizations that provide such opportunity, interns and then graduate programs and build the leadership over the years, that can help them to grow and develop that disruptive mindset. So it has to start from the early stage, and that's why I believe the Gen Z, which those are born between 94 to 2010, they are the one who are going to survive. They are the one who I think they are much more be able to demonstrate the disruptive mindset because they're born in the internet era. Whereas the Gen Y, the millennials are born between 1980 to 94. They are slightly better because they're accustomed to it, but not as great as the Gen Z or Gen. So we need to. So what we need to do as organizations to provide opportunity.
Very good. Well, I look forward to the continued conversation that we're going to be having with Sharon and Jeff regarding what the future looks like and all that. I'll just introduce one idea for us to talk about the next time, which is that we get what we pay for, right? And you follow the money, and the money is always regarding getting results,
yes,
regardless of situation. Then we have what we have happening in the world. Right. So there are better ways to think about how investors look at investment. In the old days, we talked about stakeholders being the entire community of service, including employees and the customers and all of the people that were impacted in the area, sphere of influence of that company. Right now, it seems as though the world has primarily focused just on the financial aspects. So when there are leaders who would believe the things that you're teaching, right, and they would actually want to do it, they find that there's a squeeze on the resources in order to enable it. So how do you coach your executives to their board and their investors to understand that these investments, which you alluded to, are actually worthwhile and provide the benefits that you said?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's spot on. Yeah. So before I end, Jeff, do you have any comments or any
Well, I
questions?
just so appreciate you being here and a part of this symposium, and I really think you have some excellent points that I look forward to understanding better as I move forward. I'll look forward to reading your book as well. So thank you very much.
So thank you. So for the participant for the symposium, so I set up this I just finished yesterday new videos on disruptive innovation, disruptive leadership for the participants for the symposium, especially. So I will encourage those of you now viewing this presentation, go to the link there and take a snapshot and go into the YouTube and then subscribe the free videos and let me know and connect me on LinkedIn so we can exchange. Every week there will be an article. I write a lot of articles, so I share them free. You can download and subscribe on the Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I also have you can call me on my personal LinkedIn so I can update you what's happening in Asia, in a different part of the world. And lastly, the videos, I talk about Marriott Hotel, Boeing and Starbucks, Satya Nadella, Microsoft, how they do it in terms of the digital disruption, the digital transformation. All those videos, there's a lot of videos. Subscribe, be a free, a free. You can view them, you can download them, doesn't matter. And enjoy, and then connect and ask questions. So this is for those who are viewing this recorded session. Sorry, I cannot be with you live on that day because it's very early in the morning in Singapore. But I hope we can continue the dialogue. I really like to hear from you and get the book, read the book. Let me know what you think. And with that note, I want to say thank you once again to DBU for inviting me to be part of this the Tech Symposium 2020. And I hope you have learned, at least gain some insights into the world of disruptive leadership, what holds and I always see this huge potential because we talk about crisis, or in Chinese, the word crisis has two meanings, danger and opportunity. So Wei Xian, Wei Qi is Qi in Chinese means that in every crisis, there's always there's a danger element, like COVID-19, and also there's an opportunity if you know how to look at it. So my advice is disrupt your mindset and be prepared to huge opportunity in the post-pandemic. As you prepare, as you graduate, for those of you who are completing your studies, the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be huge opportunity. And start now. Develop that mindset now. Be ready for the world of work, the change world of work, and the future of work. It will be very exciting. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. God bless.